broadcasting around the world. This is the Hard Asset Money Show. Your wealth, your money, your future. Serious talk about what's happening and how you profit. Hosted by Christian Briggs. Follow him on X at BMC_HAM. Live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the part 2 here. It's on BRICS, China, central bank digital currency, smart contracts. We're going down deep on this thing. I said this before yesterday on that part 1 of the show that Catherine Austin Fitts, super lady, super smart, on the Tucker show, talked about all the things we're talking about now. She's been talking about this on Tucker, off Tucker, at different shows on her own with other hosts and things like that. So anything I'm saying now is just kind of putting into context a lot of what is out there, but we're trying to combine it into one easy understand format.
This podcast is brought to you by Hard Asset Management. We have the guaranteed lowest prices on all precious metals and rare coins. Call us at 844-426-4653. That's 844-426-4653.
China's financial inroads into the Caribbean. And this is important because they've made a lot of inroads there. In addition to BRICS aligned financial infrastructure, China has been aggressively expanding its influence in the Caribbean banking and financial sectors in regions historically under the economic sway of the United States. Through state-backed loans, infrastructure investments, and participation in regional development banks like the Caribbean Development Bank, China has secured powerful leverage over several Caribbean nations. Strategic investments such as ports and huge plays into hospitals or schools or bridges and roads or utility, whether it's oil and gas refineries or certainly ability to work with them into petrochemicals and things like that. So it's the Caribbean, South America, Latin America. They have been methodical in what their strategy has been. It is amazing. And so as Beijing's state-owned banks continue to issue concessional loans and tie debt agreements to Chinese suppliers and construction firms, a growing number of Caribbean nations are effectively entering a debt trap diplomacy scenario. I said that yesterday on the part 1. You know, it's kind of like a slave to debt, like these payday loans. That's very, some people say, well, it's an emergency needed in times. And yes, I do believe that can happen. And a lot of people need that critical money at that day, especially in different situations. But these arrangements risk subordinating their national infrastructure and monetary policy to China's strategic aims, forming a hidden eastern flank to the broader global assault on the U.S. dollar. The most dramatic and concerning transformation that has occurred is the deepening of the Russia-Chinese financial relationship. By 2024, the Chinese yuan replaced the U.S. dollar as the most traded currency on the Moscow exchange, accounting for 42% of all currency trades compared to the dollar's 39.5. China's trade in non-dollar currencies with Russia is estimated at $240 billion in 24, and it's grown since then, make no mistake about it, demonstrating how China can maintain economic ties despite U.S. sanctions. Yuan trading volumes in Russia tripled in 23 alone, demonstrating how quickly de-dollarization can progress. Moscow now conducts the majority of its trade with China in yuan and rubles, effectively creating a sanctions-proof channel for bilateral commerce. This is a fact. Global finance expert Matthew Piepenburg confirmed in April of 25 Gold Telegraph interview that the petrodollar system, the cornerstone of dollar dominance since the 1970s, is actively disintegrating with a staggering 20% of global oil now traded outside the dollar. This isn't a temporary market fluctuation, but what Piepenburg described as an irreversible change in the international monetary system. The petrodollar agreement that forced nations worldwide to hold massive dollar reserves has begun to unravel exactly as our adversaries planned. Even more alarming is the development of parallel financial infrastructure, especially designed to circumvent American oversight. The new development bank, headquartered in Shanghai, now led by Brazil's socialist former president Dilma Rousseff, has committed to increase local currency lending to 30% of its portfolio by 26. Meanwhile, China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, I've heard of this, a direct competitor to the U.S.-controlled SWIFT network, expanded its participants by 78% in a single year, with major international players like HSBC joining the system to boost yuan usage in global payments. Russia's Mir payment network provides yet another alternative channel for financial flows outside the reach of American monitoring. BRICS also reaffirmed its commitment to launching the BRICS Cross-Border Payments Initiative, BCBPI, the formal name for BRICS Pay, emphasizing correspondent banking networks and local currency settlements. Over 150 countries have expressed interest in adopting BRICS Pay, which aims to break the monopoly of the Western SWIFT system using digital currency technology. Kremlin aide Yuri Yugoslav stated in March of 24, a little over a year ago, that BRICS Pay is a priority for enhancing the bloc's role in international monetary system, with a target launch post of 28. However, it is rumored to be launched much earlier. President Trump recognized the severity of this threat when he warned BRICS nations they would face a 100% tariff if they so much as even think about reducing the use of the dollar. It was acknowledging the external nature of this coordinated assault on our currency. The architects of this de-dollarization campaign, understanding that America's global power rests significantly on dollar dominance, precisely why they are so determined to end it. We have to look at this thing in a whole different light. We have to look at this as a coordinated effort, like we said yesterday, and where the BRICS stand and what that means. Because China and other nations feel that they are the dominant power holders of the financial system. That's the cause. The effect is why our interest rates are staying high. It's not just about inflation. Inflation is really not that bad if you use the government's old numbers. I think it's a lot worse. But let's just say the 2.8 that was reported yesterday is effectively where the core stands. Okay, 2.8. It shows growth, GDP growth. Trump's doing an amazing job. He's getting the job done. But let me tell you something. You have to also look at the fact that we have a debt problem, a deficit spending problem. Doge has been amazing. Elon Musk has done a great job in trying to cut the fat, waste, and corruption. God knows probably more corruption than the other two. And trying to systematically bring down the spending. Trump's out there cutting deals, working his butt off. He's almost 80 years old. You'd think he was about 25 the way he's going. And he's trying to make a standard, new partnerships, new relations, new revenues, new manufacturing coming here. He's trying to build up that GDP, build up the growth. What's frightening is that the Federal Reserve is not lowering interest rates, not because they think inflation's out of control or not moderate enough to lower them. I think they're fearful that the dollar could collapse, because if the interest rates come down, typically the dollar will lose a lot of its value, because there are other places you can get a higher rate of return on debt or certainly put money to work in other economies. And so there is some fear there, I believe, that Federal Reserve is holding tight on the rates to keep the dollar strong. But again, that's a theory. I mean, I can't prove that, but it's just a theory based on some economics. This is a big thing here in the tariffs. And China never does a deal that it doesn't feel it got the upper hand. It never will. Now, whether that's true or not, that they get the upper hand, we have to wait and see. But they'll never do something if they think that they're not getting that 51%. We know this. They may do a deal for the sake of a deal, undermining what they promised to do later and being able then to push this aside. That's kind of what we're seeing. So while foreign adversaries openly attack the dollar dominance, we've got now other areas in the U.S. that's also become a problem. America's most prominent institutions have been positioning themselves for a post-dollar world. In April of 25, last month, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, head of the $10 trillion asset management firm, announced that BlackRock was creating an entire marketplace for tokenized assets outside traditional American financial infrastructure. Basically, non-dollar, non-banks, and they're going to be able to buy and sell into this digitalized tokenization revolution is coming, Fink declared on CNBC, revealing plans for a blockchain-based platform that would trade tokenized stocks, bonds, and real estate without the need for traditional dollar-based settlement systems. Fink calling it the best next generation for markets and a tool to revolutionize financial ownership and investing. Yeah. So again, we've got China and the BRICS coming at us from a dollar de-dollarization standpoint, undermining our ability to have dollar dominance, which would destroy our sovereignty. Interest rates are staying high. because it's not about just the inflation. There's other factors that are weighing in on the Fed's decision, which does make sense, and it's a reasonable expectations that they'll probably maintain that through the rest of this year. Even if inflation was to drop, I think what we're seeing is an acceleration in debt. And the tariff thing, that I call it the thing because we don't really have a deal yet. We have a pause. We have kind of a low end of the tariffs. And that is really what's about, is that we're trying to negotiate with this 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's a behemoth, China and the BRICS. So you're not negotiating with China. You're negotiating with countries that have combined their potential value together to systematically try to become the dominant player in the world's financial system. And they will not stop until they get that. By a third of the countries are either quasi-capitalist, socialist, or just outright communist. And the other ones are, I call them semi-capitalist, maybe not to the level of quasi, but some are semi. And now you have internal, I mean, look at the Democrats, what they've done. They just want to destroy the country half the time. That's half the whatever comes out of their mouth. And now we have BlackRock and other companies that are talking about tokenization of our assets. And that gives, and people say, well, what's the big deal if they tokenize it? Well, if it goes on the blockchain without an encryption key, you can't move that asset from one person to the other. You can't. You have to get permission. Let's say it could be a government permission in order to sell it. You have to get permission so that that asset can transfer on blockchain. That's why tokenization of assets like home deeds and all these different things is so critical, that we maintain decentralized systems and not centralized. So when does adopting and adapting technical change become active participation in the dollar's managed decline? The same Wall Street titans who shipped American manufacturing overseas are now preparing to ship away our monetary sovereignty. BlackRock's tokenization platform directly undermines the dollar's role in global securities markets, potentially eliminating the need for dollar reserves to facilitate international investment flows. When BlackRock moves, it doesn't just respond to markets, it shapes them. This platform isn't being developed in response to some organic market demand, but as preparation for and acceleration of a new world financial order where the dollar is just one currency among many, no longer the indispensable global reserve asset. The timing of BlackRock's announcement coincided with the European Central Bank's digital euro confirmation and the UAE's digital dirham launch date shows the coordinated nature of this monetary reset.
Now we have in Europe this threshold above 1,000 euros, you cannot pay cash. If you do, you are on the gray market. You take your risk. You get caught, you are fined, or you go in jail. But the digital euro is going to have a limited amount of control. There will be control, you're right.
These are not independent developments, but components of a synchronized global pivot away from the dollar-centric financial architecture that has underpinned American prosperity since World War II. When the world's largest asset manager, the Eurozone Central Bank, and Middle Eastern oil producers all announced major non-dollar financial initiatives within the same month, it exposes the orchestrated nature of this assault on American financial sovereignty. Well, where have we heard that before? COVID 2020? Gee, what was that all about? We're going to go into a lot of different reasons why this is bad juju.
The Hard Asset Money Show will be right back after a word from our sponsor. Let's take a look at how the rare coin market has skyrocketed in the past 2 to 3 years, specifically proof gold, and how their performance has done after Christian Briggs, CEO of Hard Asset Management, put an immediate buy recommendation in late 2019 on United States proof gold. Specifically $20 St. Gaudens gold pieces, $20, $10, and $5 Liberty proof gold, and $10 and $5 Indian head proof gold. According to PCGS Price Guide, an 1849 $20 grade proof 64 plus was valued at $20 million in November 2021, and today it is worth $25 million, a rise of $5 million in less than 4 years. On April 2024, a 1921 $20 satin strike grade SP58 was valued at $750,000 according to PCGS Price Guide. Today, it is valued at $2.2 million, rising $1,450,000 in that span. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.
This whole thing we're talking about, it just shows how fast things have started to percolate in the last 6-12 months based on about 30 years of them being outside the U.S. allies. We've lost a lot of allies over the last 40 years just because of different reasons. We have relationships, but true allies or true partners within the sense of economics and military and financial, we don't have what we used to have. China has come in there with other countries and created this unbelievable dependency on each other to the point where it's almost non-breakable. Doesn't mean we can't break it, but here's what we're talking about, what's happening inside America. We don't just fight the fight outside, we're fighting it internally too. BlackRock plans to tokenize over 95% of its $10.5 trillion in assets under management, as announced in a partnership with Securitize. In March of 24, BlackRock and Securitize launched the BlackRock USD Institutional Digital Liquidity Fund, its first tokenized fund on the Ethereum blockchain. Budell invests in cash, U.S. Treasury bills, and repurchase agreements offering a stable $1 per token value and paying daily dividends to investors. It surpassed $1 billion in assets under management by October 2024. Within 6 weeks, it became the largest tokenized treasury fund, surpassing Franklin Templeton's Benji fund with a market cap of $375 million, growing to over $502.8 million by July of 24 and reaching $517 million by November of 24. That's huge. Securitize acts as a transfer agent, tokenizing platform, and placement agent for Budell, handling issuance, compliance, and trading infrastructure. Budell has since expanded to multiple blockchains, including Solana, and that was March of 25. Dollar tokenization of nearly all of BlackRock's asset is an ambitious goal that underscores its belief in tokenization as a transformative force for capital markets and the new financial system being built and deployed. BlackRock is not alone in its wide-scale tokenization efforts. It collaborates with traditional finance giants like Bank of New York, which is Mellon, custodial for Budell, and competes with notable firms like Franklin Templeton, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, which are also exploring tokenization. This is crazy. To tokenize all these assets, you're digitalizing everything we own, from our houses to our cars to contracts we have as employers, employees. They're making every asset, from the paper currency to the ownership of everything on the blockchain. And when they own that, and they will, when they centralize that, that is how then you would need permission to be able to transfer these things. You would have to have an encryption key that unlocks the ability to transfer this asset, which has a piece of code which identifies the asset, to another individual, and then it records that on the blockchain. China is exploring tokenization of assets beyond the digital yuan. This is so important, including securities and commodities, to enhance financial efficiency and global reach. Bottom line is they're doing it to circumvent the dollar in that many more ways. The digital yuan's infrastructure could support tokenized trade finance, leveraging AI and blockchain for risk assessment. I'll give you an example. For example, China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which has been around for years, which is very successful, unfortunately, integrates digital yuan payments to settle trade in RMB, that's the currency, reducing dollar use in partner countries. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, a prominent regional initiative led by China and Russia, promotes local currency trade and alternative payment systems, with China providing, this is crazy, almost $15 billion in yuan-based loans by August of 22. By promoting RMB-based tokenized trade within the BRI and SCO, China can reduce dollar demand in Asia, Africa, parts of Europe, aligning with China's goal of making the RMB a regionally powerful currency, ultimately leading to global positioning. China's tokenization efforts, led by the digital yuan and supported by broader real-world asset initiatives, aim to reduce dollar reliance by promoting RMB-based trade, bypassing sanctions, and setting global CBDC standards. These efforts could also weaken the dollar's role in regional trade, increase pressure on U.S. debt markets, and attract nations seeking alternatives to U.S. financial oversight and control. This was sent to me yesterday. According to the Wall Street Journal, Apple wants people to control their devices with their thoughts. Apple has a new tech, intended to enable people to control their iPhones and other devices with neural signals captured by a new generation of brain implants, or WSJ reports. Now you're talking about digitalizing all assets. By doing so, now a small, very small group of people, kind of like Europe, unelected officials, centralizing power in Brussels, Belgium, sound familiar? That oversees and has authority over elected officials of countries within the European bloc. The European Union oversees those elected officials. The elected officials were elected by the people. The people wanted the elected officials to govern them or put first their best interest. But the best interest may have to go to the sideline because the unelected officials in Brussels oversee the elected officials, which were elected by the people, so the people's will can't and won't be done. So that's called communism. So if you digitize all the money, electric vehicles, turn them on and off, and socialize the medicine, and then the fourth thing is digitize all the assets outside the money, it's not good. This is the cause and the effect. So again, it goes back to the same thing, is where do we stand? Where are we positioning ourselves now in order to negate all of this? And this has been going on for 150 years in China. And the theory was, starting in 1850 with the occupation by British, they said they would never, ever be held hostage like that again. And of course, the U.S. has always been their greatest enemy. I don't know why. Maybe it's just jealousy. Maybe it's the way of life. Who knows? But they have made a system out of it. So this is what China, the BRICS, CBDC is. Now let's talk about tariffs. So Trump walking into this quagmire that Biden left, it was like a demolition of many, many things. Outright fraud, corruption, as we clearly have been seeing with this Doge. He's basically now having to look at what has been a ballooning deficit spending, an out-of-control debt spiral, interest rates that are nearing now 20-year highs. In fact, I believe we hit 20-year high last night on the 10-year. Certainly the 30-year is close to that, if not at the 5% mark. These are devastating interest rates, especially when you have what I think it's $7 trillion coming due in June, another $2 to $3 trillion after that of old debt coming to be renewed. We're going to have to renew it at a substantially higher interest rate. We have entitlement programs that are out of control. The Biden administration, and I think it was purpose, I think it was willfully, did a massive job in the event that Trump would win to basically gave him, I call it the default economy. An economy that by all measures should default. Now, of course, he's a smart guy. He's got smart people. And maybe we can circumvent this. There's been a lot of talk about gold and him backing a lot of the treasuries with a gold-backed stablecoin. That legislation called the Genius Act, unfortunately, was defeated when it came ready for the vote by the Democrats who, it's Senator Hagerty, Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, put the bill together with his colleagues, the Republicans. He had bipartisan support from Democrats. They said, if you'll make these changes, we would be really excited and probably join you. At the very last minute, they said no, and the bill did not get its due respect and, of course, ultimately get passed. So the stable coin, which was going to be some kind of a PAX, P-A-X, which is a gold-backed stable coin that would track the U.S. dollar, and we would trade the PAX coin. Then they would give credence and value to the U.S. dollar, then hold the treasuries in a stable position, and then the debt could be managed in probably a better way long term. I don't know if it's going to ever be paid back, but we could systematically do something to package it up and maybe extend the terms of the debt, the bonds, but the bill didn't pass. And so the gold-backed stablecoin that had been talked about or certainly rumored to be about, and it was all over. I mean, everybody was talking about $10,000 reset price, possibly going back to the gold standard. We talked about it because we were seeing all sorts of stuff all over X and on different places on internet, theories, conspiracies, what have you. So there was something going on. We know this to be true. We know this. But none of that matters because you got to have the mechanism in which to do it. So what does this mean? What it means is we've got a problem with the debt now. So now gold might be the de facto place. It's interesting because so many people talk about this massive debt. 7 million people, 6.5 or 7 million people joined Social Security in 23, 24 was 5 or 6 million as well. God knows what we're going to have joined this year. These entitlement programs, and people earned them. There are people who paid into the system and they overpaid and they paid for others who did not have the fortunate opportunity to pay, and they may have been in a position not to do so. So my heart goes out to them for that. But at the end of the day, it's still math. It's not emotion. So you have to deal with really a bankrupt company. People think the U.S. is the richest nation in the world. It's not the richest nation when you look at assets versus debt with revenue, underlying income. It's a business. And when you think about 37 trillion, you don't even think like that. That's not the debt. When you look at the long-term liabilities of the United States government at the federal level, forget the state and local level, just go to the federal level. You got to realize we're talking about $100 trillion in long-term liabilities. We have literally determined that we don't need to worry about the viability of this country from an economic standpoint, that it was somehow going to magically take care of itself. The NAFTA treaty that we did with this manufacturing that left during the Clinton years was horrible. Ross Perot was right. It was a bad deal. Bad deal. Worst deal ever in U.S. history. I hope Clinton got a really good amount of money for selling out his country, because that's what it was. It was that NAFTA was known to be bad. People told him it was going to be bad, but he did it anyway, and God knows why, but hopefully he has an answer one day. Fast forward, here we are, BRICS nations, and now we're dealing with this debt. We're dealing with countries around the world that are telling us, our friends, telling us we're going to work on these tariffs. They're not going to do that. We're going to hold their feet to the fire as best we can, but at the end of the day, China has never, ever done what they say they're going to do that would benefit anybody but China. So if you look at what they promise you, say, or do, remember this. It's always going to benefit China. So make sure whatever we do has such covenants and penalties, but they're still going to do it. They'll do it in a way that undermines us in the long game. We think as Americans way, way, way too short. We're too short-sighted. So what we need to do is to be able to look at exactly what's important. And what's important is to protect the wealth of us. And right now, people need to be hedging the devaluation. I mean, think about it. People are like, oh, no, I'm making tons of money in the stock market. I hope you're making a ton of money because, or in real estate or bonds or wherever, or gold. That's good, because you got to maintain the consistency of the wealth value against the cost of living. That's the key. So this is a war that is literally at our front door. And I'm going to tell you something. The solution is going to be putting our faith in God, our trust in Trump, and to get this thing through what is going to be the inevitability of whatever happens was meant to be, because there's no way. We did a 27-page report, which we sent to D.C. to members, and we were told it was very accurate. It was exceptionally accurate. It was accurate, and it was timely. So we know that we did the right thing by putting this together. We've sent this to another group of people that also felt the same, that it was consistent. And I'm just saying this to you now, and that is, we're going to see hard assets move considerably higher. We're going to see growth in places we never thought was possible, and returns. So my advice to everybody is make sure that we support the right people that do exactly what they say and say what they do, that put the country first, like Donald Trump and several other people in Congress, and we get back to business and get this deficit spending and this debt under control, because we're at the point now where interest rates are reflecting. The bond market's reflecting something bad, something very catastrophic. And why we're not lowering interest rates is very simple. We can't. We just can't right now, because the dollar would have a systematic crash and collapse, and that would be even worse than what would be to maintain right now and try to regroup. So we're going to come back tomorrow with another huge show that we're going to further this. We'll call it part 3 or call it expansion. But statistically, we're going to keep going down deep into what's going on and try to make sure that what we're doing as a country is viable, number one. Number two, that it reflects the will of the people, because people voted for change. We voted to get back to a nation that puts our country, our manufacturing, our people first. Trump is doing that. The question is, will the rest of the Congress fall in line? And it should. I'm gonna stay hopefully optimistic. So thank you for joining us, and we'll be back tomorrow with another great show.
Look at how the rare coin market has skyrocketed in the past 2 to 3 years, specifically proof gold, and how their performance has done after Christian Briggs, CEO of Hard Asset Management, put an immediate buy recommendation in late 2019 on United States proof gold, specifically $20 St. Gaudens gold pieces, $20, $10, and $5 Liberty proof gold, and $10 and $5 Indian head proof gold. According to PCGS Price Guide, an 1878 $1 J1553 RB grade proof 65 plus was valued at $2,250 in October 2023, and today it is worth $190,000, an astronomical rise of 8,344%. On September 2021, a 1907 cent grade proof 68 was valued at $7,750 according to PCGS Price Guide. Today it is valued at $100,000, rising 614% in that span.